Welcome to She's the Boss, the podcast where female wellness entrepreneurs talk ambition, money, and ownership out loud. I'm your host, Lee McSwan, a certified holistic nutritionist turned wellness business coach. This is where conversations are unfiltered, the rules of entrepreneurship get rewritten, and nothing is off limits. Money, motherhood, friendships, legacy, wealth, power, and what it really takes to build a life and business on your terms. Let's get after it.
Today's guest is Jasmine Marra, who is a certified life coach and financial expert with a background in marketing and sales and an MBA. She founded Quantum Femme Wealth, a company focused on helping women reframe their money mindset and build lasting financial freedom. At one point in her life, a divorce and a job loss left her as a single mom with $50K in debt, and she ultimately transformed her life and wealth, building multiple streams of income and a multi-million-dollar portfolio, including 23 properties and counting in real estate. Transcending the White Picket Fence, A Modern Woman's Guide to Wealth, Abundance, and Freedom is her first book, which released last year, and it serves as a roadmap for women to break free from traditional security narratives, rewire limiting money beliefs, and build true abundance. Her work centers on helping women become financial leaders of their lives and legacies, not just financially secure by conventional standards. Jasmine, welcome to She's the Boss.
Thanks for having me, Lee. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. Thank you so much. I think the most appropriate way to kick off our conversation is kind of the random social media way that we got connected. Do you want to share that story?
Yeah, I think, it's so interesting about this story too, because I have met some of the most incredible humans on the planet through the wild way that we call social media. And so Lee and I met, I think you had commented on a post I created. And
I messaged you when I saw your story.
oh, okay. Tell me your side and then I'll pick it up from there.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't even know how you fell into my world, to be honest, because the Instagram page that I currently have now is new. I started from scratch. I left another page with like over close to 6,000 followers, and I started from scratch. And I was just like, I'm going to follow the women that just kind of land for me. Like they're just going to come to me and vice versa, right? Like that's how I went into it. And so I don't even know how I found you or if I found you through somebody else, but I've always watched your stories because I just love to see what you're doing. And I just instantly was like, oh my gosh, this woman is so cool. She's so down to earth. She's clearly successful and I love what she stands for. So then I saw that you were in Costa Rica, which is where we lived prior to moving back to Canada. And I was like, oh, I know where you are, which is probably like the creepiest thing you can say to somebody. But I know that I'm not a creeper. So I was like, I'm just leading with that. And I was like, you're in Tamarindo. And that's where my husband has a business. So we know that area very well. And you were like, yeah, that's actually where I am.
Yeah, it's so funny. And to be fair, I actually wasn't freaked out by that at all. I was like,
perfect.
This is amazing. How does this person know exactly where I am? And so on my end, I thought, this is someone who really knows Costa Rica. And I love that, right? So, and Costa Rica is just like, it's such a vibe. And I'm like plotting my escape right now. And then when we got back, we started just chatting and realized we're in the same place. So it felt a little serendipitous.
Yeah, it was pretty funny because I actually thought you were in BC. I knew you were on the west side and I just assumed you were in Canada. I don't know why, but I was like, I'm in the Calgary area. And you're like, I'm in Calgary. And I was like, okay, this is too funny. And then I signed up for your mastermind and I was like, do you want to be a guest on my podcast that I'm just launching, have no idea what I'm doing? And you're like, yeah, absolutely. So it was kind of just a nice instant friend feeling, which I really appreciate. But Jasmine, I have so many questions to ask you. Your story is so inspiring. I guess that's the best way that I can describe it. Your book is out. It is so good. I haven't finished reading it. I just got it, but I got pulled in pretty quickly, I have to say, which doesn't happen for me with a lot of books. The cover is beautiful. You are a beautiful writer. We're going to talk about your book a little bit more, but I want to go back to the beginning for you. You have become a successful multimillionaire. Did you grow up learning about money? Did you come from wealth? What's the backstory with money specifically for you?
Thanks for that question. No, I definitely did not. So I think, I might describe myself as middle class growing up. I had a beautiful family. There's 3 kids in our family. My mom worked at the hospital. My dad worked at his school. And so, I would describe ourselves as middle class. So we were definitely people who did not have, designer bags or designer clothes. Or I remember going to school and being like, "Can I get some Nikes?" They're like, "No, we're going to Walmart." Like that was the vibe, right? Like it was all about utility. And so there was nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of things that I learned from that. But what I actually learned also on the other side is some of that thinking did keep me in that middle class mindset. And so really to shift to a place where I had overflow and wealth, there was a lot of things that I need to really examine or rewire or reconsider. And the catalyst for that was, I think as a woman, there is a lot of pressure, right? There's a lot of pressure on us to be like the best wife, the best, income breadwinner, the best mom. And so I think for a lot of women, you can really relate to this, where it was just like, I felt a lot of pull, right? I felt a lot of pull, a lot of strain. And I sort of had this moment where it was like, you know what? I need to figure out another way. I need to figure out another way. So that was sort of where it started, from like just a thought process, and, kind of built from there.
Okay, that's amazing. So take me back to the day that you decided that your marriage was over. You had just lost your job. What were you doing as a career at that time?
Yeah, so I was working for, I like to call it the beautiful golden handcuffs. Growing up, one of the things that we were told was like, get a good job, work for the government, get a pension, all these things. So off I went to double down on all of that. So at the time I was working for the government, working for the Tourism Bureau. I did enjoy my job. This is not a narrative of not enjoying it. But at the same time, I, kind of married someone who wasn't the right match for me. And I'll spare everyone the details just out of respect. I do have a 13-year-old. That was a beautiful gift out of that marriage. So, you can always see the beauty that comes in hindsight. But I finally realized I had this moment where it was like, they did everything, quote unquote, by this checklist, right? It was like, I got the good job. I married the nice, quote unquote, nice guy. And, I had the family, I had the white picket fence. So on paper, it looked like we had everything. Yeah. But quietly, I just knew it was totally misaligned for me. And so there's this moment of bravery, is what I'll call it, to just decide this is not the life that I want for my son. This is not the life that I want for me. And I think for anybody out there who's listening who's a mom, it's one thing to tolerate pain when you're by yourself, but it's another when you have someone else to push on. And that really shifted for me, because it was like, I did not want to raise my son in an environment where there's arguing or misalignment or friction or financial strain. Like that wasn't what I wanted. And so somewhere in that mess of craziness, I just decided this isn't going to work. So I did decide to leave my marriage. It was a very difficult decision because, of course, there's lots of impacts. It's like a 0 out of 10 star review situation. Highly don't recommend. Please don't listen to this podcast and be like, I'm going to get divorced and everything's going to be amazing. That is not the narrative I want you to lead with here.
Right.
For sure. But that was the aligned decision for me. And so very shortly after that, we sold our house. I had a little bit of proceeds from that and decided to buy my own house. And you can read the book for all the nuances of how I got there. But just kind of scraped enough together to be like, I need room for my son and I. So that's what I did. We downsized into a little smaller duplex. And then again, shortly after, I lost my, golden handcuff government job. So I think those are pretty dark days for me. I can make light of them now, and I can see that they were the jumping off point for something new. But I think what happens to most people is we change our lives either because things are so amazing and we want more, or because they're so painful and we can't tolerate it anymore. And so I think the truth is we can change our lives at any moment. We don't have to wait for those two extremes. But I learned it in this is too painful. I can't keep it the same. So here I am, lost my job, my marriage, house, like my thing, my pension, like everything. in the blink of an eye. And I had to have a really serious chat with myself. Like I think everybody who hits that rock bottom moment does, where it's like, okay, what now? And so that was the catalyst for what now.
And for those women that are listening to this and they're like, I think I'm at my rock bottom and I just don't know what the next step is for me, what advice would you give them?
A great question.
Quick pause to share this. Curated is my hands-off course creation agency for entrepreneurs who want a digital course without the DIY. If that feels like the next smart move for you, you'll find it linked in the show notes.
I think one of the things that really helped me in that moment is I remember sitting, of course, I had a son to take care of. So I went into like, what next? I got to find another job. I got to do all things. So I kind of went into action, right?
Yeah.
But once I was able to regulate my nervous system to just have enough to come in to cover the bills, it was sort of like, okay, if I know that this narrative of checking all the boxes did not equal happiness like it was supposed to, I need to give myself space to figure out what brings me joy again. So I actually wrote down on a sticky note, follow how you feel, and the rest will work itself out. And so that would be my advice, is that if you find yourself in this moment where you just wake up and you're like, oh my goodness, like my whole life feels misaligned, it's really about giving yourself enough space to know what is your joy. Because I think from a societal perspective, we all learn, even subconsciously, what supposed good looks like. But we don't often consciously think about, does this feel good anymore? Do I like this? Or is this just the Kool-Aid that I was brought up on? And there's nothing wrong with that Kool-Aid. Like, this is not a knock on anyone who's loving life that way. It's just, if you find yourself in a place where it's not good, just give yourself the space to realign and rediscover. And that's what I did in that moment, because I literally felt like I was in an ocean without a paddle.
And did you know that you wanted to lean into entrepreneurship? Was that something that you had always felt kind of within your heart? Was it interesting to you? How did you kind of step out of those quote unquote golden handcuffs and say goodbye to the government job instead of just going to a different department and applying?
Yeah, I think, if I'm really honest with myself, I think I was always an entrepreneur. I think back to my like little Jasmine, and she was like catching bees and charging $5 for entry to see all the animals. Like, that's who I was, right? But then again, somewhere along the way, I started to just, become the white picket fence and do the thing you're supposed to do. And so I think, again, the catalyst for me was less practical than everybody wants it to be. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do entrepreneurship. It was more like, I just know I don't want to rely on one income anymore, because I have a child, and if somebody turns the tap on because there's a restructuring at the top, or somebody makes a decision, and next thing you know, like, I spent 8 years serving this organization and they just made this swoop decision, which, by the way, organizations have to do that all the time. So this is not a knock on that. It's just, I felt that I needed to start to play with, how can I bring in different streams of income so that if that happens again, I'm not putting myself and my son at risk of not being able to literally either buy food or pay for electricity. Like, I don't want that to be our reality. And it's not going to be my reality. So I just kind of made this decision, like, line in the sand. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing that anymore. And it wasn't like I knew what I was going to do. It was just like, I just know I'm not going to do the one and done, only one income stream. Like, it's not happening. And so that kind of led me on a journey of all kinds of things. Like, I did MLM for a little bit. I played with multiple streams of income. I looked digital products, all these things. But the point is that I started to play with it, and it became an experiment to see how many different streams of incomes I could have, not just to, really just to regulate myself and my son, but then it became more than that, because I was like, oh, this is the thing. And so
yes, a theme that I feel like is going to come up in this conversation is this identity shedding and this stepping into this new era and this new version of an evolved self. So can you tell me, what identity shifts did you need to happen in order to go from being 50K in debt to making your first 6 figures in your business as a solopreneur?
Yeah, such a great question. I think, it's not like I can really pinpoint one identity that I needed to shed. It was more of a becoming, right? So when I moved from, let's say, corporate world into entrepreneurship and multiple streams of income, one of the things I really had to get my energy around was, it's not, I do something and I get something, right? So it's not, I punch the clock and I know how much is coming back, which is largely what we do in corporate, which, by the way, there's some beautiful things about that. Like, if that's a vibe for you, that's amazing. Like, if you're like, I've got a multiple 6-figure income, I punch the clock, I have time with my family, like, awesome, good for you. Right.
Yeah.
And then, for me, it was like, that wasn't fulfilling. Right. And so it was like, I get some energetic exchange of creating, of doing, of building value. And so, one of the biggest identity shifts that I really needed to go through was just to step into this new energy of being a value creator, not a clock puncher. Right. So, you think about money is the byproduct of the value we're able to create. And how much value we can create is based on how many people we can touch, and how many people we can touch depends on how much pressure we can hold. And so when we talk about identities, there's multiple, I'm going to say multiple layers of the onion, right? Because it's kind of like you spiral up one staircase and you're like, oh, there's a whole new level here. Didn't see that before.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I think the biggest thing is, like, entrepreneurship is not for everyone.
And that was my next question. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that is okay. Like, you have to be a certain type of devoted to be an entrepreneur. And I think we glorify and we glamorize this idea of entrepreneurship. And to be clear, like, I think entrepreneurship is amazing and I've chosen that path. But I also, for anybody listening that's not chosen that path, like, that's okay too.
That's totally fine. Yeah. There's a lot of comfort in a corporate job. And I totally agree, because a lot of people are like, anybody cannot be an entrepreneur. I believe anybody can be anything if they put their mind to it and want it bad enough. But is it the desire for most people? And I don't know that it needs to be this glorified thing across the board. Like, I think there's a lot of people in my life and my husband's lives that we look at and we're like, man, their day really ends at 5 o'clock and they just shut off their brain. What is that like? And so that's not a world that I know as a lifelong entrepreneur and as a business owner. And I think that entrepreneurs have this special attraction to figuring things out. And that's kind of what draws us to entrepreneurship, because we go into it with a lot of rose-colored glasses, but also a lot of awareness that we don't know what the fuck we're doing half the time. We're just taking the bull by the horns and going through it. So what is an example of a time in your business, or maybe even in your life, where you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm all in. I'm going for it. I'm committed. And I just have the confidence that I'm smart enough to figure out how to do it.
Yeah. I mean, like every
day. Every day.
Yeah. Like every day, all the time. I mean, one example that really comes to mind right away is, and I think this is part of just that entrepreneurial DNA, is like, you've got to like trying new things, right? Like, if you're looking for certainty of outcome, like, entrepreneurship, it's just not for you, right?
Yeah.
And so you've got to love trying new things, experimenting, throwing things against the wall, being okay with it not working, right? And just picking yourself up and keep it going. So I've got a couple of examples. I'll just use real estate examples. So for me, just for the audience, I am a financial coach and a business coach. So that's primarily what I do in my online business. And I also have a real estate investment company. And so before I became an online business coach and, wrote books and all these things, I actually built myself quiet wealth, is what I'll call it. Quiet wealth is a background with real estate. And so I'll use a real estate example. We purchased multiplexes a few years ago. So 16 housing essentially all at once, which is
that's wild.
That's wild, right? And so I remember this happening, and it's like, just make a note on nervous system regulation here. A lot of people talk about nervous system regulation, and the idea is like you're supposed to feel calm, but my experience has not been that. It's more been like, I'm totally activated and I have the tools to regulate myself enough that I can still make clear, concise movements and decisions and actions forward. That's my definition of system regulation.
I love it.
Especially in these really big decisions. So I remember we had this opportunity. There's a program with the Canadian government, for anybody listening. It still exists. It's called the MOA Select program, where you can access funding through CMHC to encourage affordable housing in Canada. So if you're in Canada, this applies. If you're in the US. In any event, you can access it with less down, so 5% down, a number of conditions, commercial financing. There's a whole bunch. But the short story is, I didn't know how to navigate any of it, but I knew like we were doing it, right? So the full body decision, we're doing this, we're changing our lives, we're going to 10x our properties, like right now it's happening. And we did it. And there was a lot of things we learned along the way. There was a lot of things we navigated. But on the other side of that, we basically like multiplied our portfolio overnight with that move. We're now just about to hit 30 since I sent you that. So, we're just,
oh my God.
I think the thing I'll leave the audience with is you can Google how to be a multimillionaire and like everything is so available to us. Information is available. It blows my mind every day. I scroll on Instagram and it's like, oh my gosh, like if I wanted to build a business, a course, a digital asset, an affiliate market, like it's so available to you.
It's wild how much access we have.
It's beautiful and wild. Yeah. And the people who will move to the next level are not the ones who just sit and know. They're the ones who move. They're the ones who act. And this is how we change our lives, because nothing that you didn't do matters. It's only the things you do that matter. And so I think that's really what this real estate adventure and coaching and all the things that I help business owners with really shifted, was the gap between knowing and doing is like really wide. So just get on the doing side.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm somebody that likes action. I don't want to sit and think about it. If I have a full body yes, it's a yes. If it's a full body no, it's a no. And I know relatively very quickly. For people that don't have that experience, how would you suggest kind of tapping into that or getting more in tune with that kind of inner knowing so that we can make what I would define in your case as these massive quantum leaps before we have all the know-how and just leaning more so into that self-trust?
It's a great question. One of the things I'll just offer here is I spent 20 plus years in corporate. And if you're listening to this and you spend any time in corporate, you'll know that one of the things that are often preached is, strategy before implementation or strategy before tactics, strategy, 10-year plan, 5-year plan, all of it. And what I want to offer is strategy sometimes saves us time, but action and implementation is what gets us there. And so my personal opinion is there is an overemphasis on strategy and knowing how to do it. And there's an underemphasis in just getting it done. And
just throwing it out there, right?
Just go experiment. Like this is the very basis of innovation. And I think this is where most corporations really need to spend a lot more time thinking about it. And let's remember, every corporation started with an entrepreneur somewhere along the way. So, the whole thing is, it's so interesting in that sense.
And okay, so you buy this 16 unit building essentially. Was that what you would define as a quantum leap?
I mean, for me, that was a huge leap from where we were, right? I think at that time we had like 5 or 6 or a handful, which by the way, still often, if you have a handful, that's me. I think one of the things, just going back to your question about intuition, is because of all of the strategy conversation, all of the programming that we've gotten, I will say there are moments, and for anybody listening, if you don't know your human design profile, I highly recommend you go with that. It changed my life. And so for me, my authority, which is how I make decisions, is sacral. So many years ago, I couldn't articulate what that was that I was feeling. Like I'd maybe call it a gut feeling, let's say. But when I let that lead, when I let my instincts lead, it's always incredible, right? And where I get messed up is like if I get too far in my head. So in my book, I talk about head, heart, and gut thinking. And so often we're predisposed just to think with our head. but we don't necessarily give our heart and our gut as much power. And so what I've done is really acknowledge, oh, my authority is in my sacral. So let me follow those gut feelings. Let me follow that intuition more and trust that it's guiding me. And that has, it's honestly, it's changed my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you a Manny Gen?
No, I'm a generator.
You're a full-on generator. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Amazing.
But I did feel like a Manny Gen sometimes with all of the energy going on.
Yeah. And so, okay, at what point does quantum femme wealth come to life?
Yeah. Oh, good question. Quantum femme wealth. So once I lost my job, went through a divorce, I did actually get another job and ended up climbing the ladder, became a shareholder of that organization, and just had a moment where it was like, okay, this is what I always wanted, and I'm still feeling misaligned. So listened back into my gut. And there was a moment in time where I knew, I've always known what I want to do. Like I always knew I wanted to be a coach. I always knew that I wanted to be a business, coach. Like it's always been there. I just maybe didn't have the confidence or to do it. We always tell ourselves like, oh, I need more accolades or I need more time or it's not the right time or could I build the money? There's so many things that we say to ourselves. It's not very nice to ourselves sometimes.
That's true.
And then I finally just got to the point where I was like, you know what, if I'm really going to do this, let me do this. And so hired a mentor, started to learn some skills, did some coaching, actually built a practice while I was working part-time at that place for a period of time, and then made the leap into. So there was this moment in time where it kind of bridged the gap. So
what's a pattern that you see in your line of work with the coaching side of things with women and finances as a whole?
Oh yeah, great question. I have a whole signature talk on this one, but one of the biggest things I think for women is we tend to undercharge, right? So we tend to underestimate our skills, underestimate our value. We tend to really hold back in selling and promoting and call it humble or don't want to be too pushy or whatever. Like there's so many things that come up for us. And I think it's fair because society does portray women who have money and wealth as bitches or as evil villains, or think of, Devil Wears Prada, or so many mainstream cold, ruthless, uncaring. And, the truth is women in corporate deal with this as well if they're in a high powered position. And so it's very real. It's a very real experience, I think women have. And so we tend to hold back. And I don't know, have you heard of the witch wound? I can share here.
The witch wound? No, please do.
Okay, so you're going to love this. When you think of the history of time of women being visible, speaking their voice, it's not until very recently, essentially this decade, where women can speak their voice freely the way that we do. And so when you think about, 100, 200, 300 years ago, women were actually burned at the stake.
Yeah.
For speaking their truth, for speaking spirituality, for talking about intuition, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And so what we know from science is that we actually hand down these genetic patterns, right? So it's we experience something and therefore we store this trauma in our body. And so if we procreate, we send that down the line. And so when you think of hundreds of years, whether it was getting burned at the stake or beat by their partners or, so many different things, we actually have DNA that is truly scared, so to speak, the witch wound, to speak our truth.
Wow. How do we heal this?
We speak our truth now. And
we
so
just do it.
This is the moment where as women, we have the platform, the space, the support, the equality in gender that we, I know there's a lot more to do there. So I'm going to use that loosely, but nobody's going to get burned at the stake, right?
That's right.
We have the moment where if we're able to overcome our fear, if we're able to overcome that visibility wound, that witch wound, we get to change the programming for all women past us. We get to be the example, the embodiment. We actually get to change ourselves at a cellular level. And so if you're sitting at home listening to this podcast and you know deep down you're meant for more, or that you have something to say, now's the moment. And even you, like having this podcast, having this place where we can rally together and have these deep conversations about she's the boss. Like this is what we do.
This is our power. And women really have that power of like gathering together. And traditionally, that's what we've always done. Women are never meant to be alone in isolation. We're meant to be together in community in order to build and raise the village. In your experience, what kind of shifts do you see with the women when they come together in community? And whether that's through a mastermind or, a small container or coming to an in-person event, what power does that unlock?
Yeah. So I first want to say, like, community is a key pillar of my brand. It's a key pillar with my business partner, Maggie. We have a number of containers, but ultimately, I think the power of coming together is just that. It's to realize and normalize, like, we are all the same. I think it's interesting. One thing that has happened to me and sharing my story, stopping doing it quietly and sharing, is there are at times projections around who I am as a person. It's like, oh, you have lots of money. So da-da-da. You have lots of money. So it's all you care about. You have lots of money. So it's this. And it's like, it's actually so far from that. And so being in these close-knit communities and people seeing that they're actually the same. There's nothing separating you from your dream. Like nothing, just you.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we're all not handed different things, but being in a room where everybody has that same energy, has that same belief, it does have the potential to quantum leap, because now you're not just thinking about things, you're doing them, and you're doing them in a tribe, and you're doing them in a pack, and you're doing them in a community that if you fall or you have a hard moment or somebody says something wrong or something goes wrong, it's like that whole community is there to lift you up. And the power in that is that you bounce back quicker. And when you bounce back quicker, everything moves at lightning speed.
And I think the beautiful thing too is that we realize when we're in a group of women is that our problem is not unique, right?
Yeah, totally.
And what we get to see is that, say we're in a mastermind together, for example, you're at a different chapter than I'm at, and Susie's in a different chapter, and blah, blah, blah. So we all are on these different timelines. And what's so beautiful about it is that the person who's gone before us and has an experience similar to ours can then support us. And the person that is receiving that support is then going to do that for the next person. So it's like this beautiful waterfall effect that happens. And what the most powerful thing within that is that all these doubts and beliefs that lean more towards the negative side of things start to slough off, because we're now rewiring the brain. New neural pathways are being made that show us our stories, our limiting beliefs, that the result that we expect to see doesn't have to be this negative thing, because look, 15 other people have gone before me and done the thing. And I think that this is kind of your why, right? It's like getting women together, bringing the power back to the female collective so that we can then, in a sense, globally heal. Whether that's our finances, our health, our spirituality, whatever. It's really like, I really applaud the work that you're doing and the conversations that you're holding with women, because money is at the core of so much. In your opinion, would you say that money buys happiness?
This is so funny. I get asked this question all the time, if you would believe this, and I have an unequivocal answer to it. Somebody asked me in a mastermind recently. I put myself in my own masterminds. I think it's important we all have that community. And they said, what come first? The joy, then the money, or the money and then the joy? And my unequivocal answer was, my joy came first. So here's the thing. I do believe money matters. I think anybody who said money doesn't matter, like, we're not. And there's this weird undertone to this idea that money doesn't buy happiness, right? Because if I said to you, yes, money doesn't buy happiness, then the narrative would be, I don't need money because I can be happy without it.
It's like this shadow that comes up and you're like, there's more to this. This isn't really the money.
That's right. There's more of a nuanced conversation, right? So the nuanced conversation is, if I don't have money, can I still be happy? And the answer is yes.
Of course you can.
I enjoy a bowl of mac and cheese as much as I did when I had absolutely no money, right?
Yeah.
But I think the nuance is like not having money is a restrictor of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have a restriction of choice, you're choosing things because you're restricted from other choices. But when you have money, what becomes more important is discernment, right? And so it's like, am I going to have the homemade bun from my mother-in-law, which brings me incredible joy with her homemade stew? Or am I going to go out and have a 5-course dinner at the steakhouse, which again, I love both, but what do I want? Well, guess what? I'm going to have the homemade bun and the homemade stew because that's what I feel like today. I'm not choosing it because of money. And so that to me is the nuance, is like, if you have more money, if you're waiting for joy to come from having more money, you are not going to be a happy person.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is my journey, is what happened to me was I lost everything. I lost my money, my job, my marriage, everything. And so I didn't have a choice but to turn inward to figure out what was going to bring me joy again. And from that place, I built Overflow. That's why when you look at my content, I talk specifically about being a first generation joyful millionaire, joy being the primary component. The crazy thing about what I do, Lee, is that honestly, I can teach you money. That's not a problem. That's the easy part. That's the part everybody thinks that is so hard. That's the easy part. The joy, that is an internal conversation that you need to really have for yourself. This is, by the way, why we have so many people with lots of money that are incredibly unhappy and lonely, because they only focused on the money. Mm-hmm. They didn't focus on joy. So when we say, does money buy happiness? There's a nuance there that I want to be really clear with everyone. And that's simply, I want you to have both. Like, I want you to have so much joy that you wake up every day and it's like sunshine and rainbows and it's amazing and you feel so good in your body and everything is potentially on the up, even if things are going bad. And I want you to have piles and boats of money so you can go change the world and do what you need to do and make a meaningful contribution and support your children and let them have freedom.
Yes.
That's what I want.
Yeah, that's a really big pillar in my business specifically. And I actually teach it inside one of my programs, is that we have to build purpose. And we have to do that by contributing financially to something that matters to us, because that is what leaves us feeling purposeful at the end of the day. It is absolutely amazing to make money. And I think that money in the hands of good people does great things. So, but if that's the sole focus, if that's the sole driving factor, you are going to be on your deathbed and be like, I feel void. And that for me is the most disheartening thing, is when you see all these people that are successful on paper, but they feel empty inside, especially for women. And especially, so many people that are going to be listening are mothers, and we lose this kind of identity as our kids get older. And so we really have to look outside of our families and outside of our business, but using our business as a tool to bring us the joy, to bring us our purpose, and to make it bigger than ourselves, right? Like, we have to take care of ourselves first. We have to take care of our family. Ideally, we'd love to take care of our friends and whoever else, our community. And then from there, it goes global, right? Like, we want to be able to make a real impact with the money that we're making. And so how can people, no matter where they are on their financial journey, how can they start making their money almost work for them in a purposeful way? Like, what could they start doing today that brings them joy from their money?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I want to offer is, I don't know what brings you joy. So that's the first thing you need to contemplate. It's like, what brings you joy? And, for some people, it is pouring into their business. For some people, it is just providing financial security for their family. And then once they get that overflow, things unlock. So just acknowledging, like, your joy is going to evolve, and what matters to you is going to evolve over time. And that's okay. That's awesome, right? Just take time to check back into it. But from a financial perspective, one of the easiest things that you can do is make sure that you're living on no more than 50% of your income. Now, why is that the magic number? It's because if you live on more than that, what's going to happen is you're falling prey to what I call lifestyle creep. So lifestyle creep is the idea that the more money I make, the bigger I live, right? Bigger house, bigger car, bigger things. Now, if those things bring you joy, and this is what you need to check into, wonderful. But if you're just doing them to keep up with the Joneses, because that's what you should be doing, you want to check yourself, right? Mm-hmm. The second thing is the reason that's the magic number of 50%, or it can be less, whatever it is you want to take the rest, which is surplus, and create meaningful leverage with that. So take that money and build assets. One of the things that I feel really passionate about right now that I'm going to start talking more about in my brand is there is a massive divide right now happening between the wealthy and the poor. And middle class, as we know it, is going to start to erode. And it's going to happen quicker and quicker than ever with AI and the advent of technology. And it's just going to happen before our eyes. So one of the things I'm really committed to talking about is how you understand your finances so that you don't get caught in that divide and you're able to really build wealth that's not just meaningful, but it's sustainable so that you're able then to pour in your purpose. Yeah. So one of the things that I find to be very true is that when we are dysregulated about money or we're worried that we cannot cover our basic bills, we are not able to create from a place of value and overflow from them. We're creating from a place of scarcity. And so you can only do that for so long, right? People will feel that energy. So really getting to a place where you can regulate yourself, live on 50%, and then take the other portion and start to build assets. Now, what are assets? Assets could be real estate, intellectual property, developing courses, play with digital marketing, affiliate marketing. There's so many things that we can do. Buy a business.
Thanks for listening to this episode of She's the Boss. If you're enjoying these conversations, I want you to hit subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. And if there's a particular episode that you need your fellow entrepreneur to hear, make sure you share it with her. And while you're at it, can you please leave a quick 5-star review? It genuinely makes a difference and I'll love you for it. Thanks so much.
But if you are not playing in any of those, that's okay. But it's going to be really, really tough to get to a place of multimillionaire status. So that would be my piece of financial advice.
No, I love that. And you built a lot of your wealth through real estate. What would you say to the woman today who's looking to just enter into the market?
Love that question. So, well, first of all, if you are looking to enter the market, come and see me. My next program that I'm going to be rolling out is called Your First Real Estate Investment. And here's the other thing. You don't have to own 30 to be in overflow. Like 1 or 2 of these things is going to change your life, right? Because I'm going to be able to teach you how to leverage the money from the bank, leverage the money from the tenants, and all in a way that you're able to build overflow and sustainability of assets. The other thing is when you look at the real estate market, there's a lot of predictions out there that eventually all of the real estate is going to be owned by someone. Do you want it to be you? Right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, like if you even look right now, there's companies, big companies out there who are actually buying up single family and residential homes for this reason. And so the idea is that at some point, again, this is all futuristic forecasting, but the idea at some point is that everybody's going to rent. Who's renting? Guess who's renting? Quote unquote poor, because they don't own the asset. So you don't need to own the whole thing. You don't need to own a whole bunch, but having a few in your portfolio that are working for you is a pretty smart, strong move. And from an inflationary perspective, your assets that are tied to inflation are going to work for you over time, right? So something like a house, it appreciates over time. What doesn't appreciate over time? A big fancy car, a nice jewelry bag, right? Yes. So again, not saying you can't buy those things, but check yourself. What brings you joy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so we're going to leave the link to that program. When are you offering it?
Maybe launching it in the first quarter. I don't have the exact date yet, but all the graphics and all the funnels all ready to go. Yeah. But yeah, it's going to be called Your First Real Estate Investment. it's going to teach everything from like how to get into the market, how to find a deal, how to actually rent your property as well. That's a lot. A lot of people have a lot of nerves around like, how do I rent it? How do I find a renter? What does it look like? That kind of thing. So it's going to go through all the basics, including some of the financing and what that looks like. And some of the different options. A lot of people think you have to put 20% down in Canada. That is in fact true, but there's also other ways around it. So you can get vendor financing and, partnerships. There's other ways around it as well. So you can get kind of creative with your creative financing on that too.
And will this be specific to Canadian investors?
So I'm going to start with Canadian investors, but to be frank, I also serve my American customers as well. So the principles are very similar. So financing varies a little bit. The US has a lot better programs, to be frank, than Canada does. But for the most part, anybody wanting to come in from a first real estate, I will cover both US and Canada. So you'll get both.
This is so beautiful. This is such a gift. So definitely check out that program, and it's going to be linked in the show notes. Would you still say that Canadian real estate is one of the best places to put your investment?
So I am biased, honestly.
Yeah.
I love real estate. I would say yes. I would also say the bigger piece here is get an asset, right? So whether it's in Canada, whether it's in the US, whether it's in Costa Rica, and fundamentally, it's about the numbers, right? So I don't invest in anything that doesn't cash flow. And so the numbers have to make sense. And I think this is where first-time real estate investors kind of get caught up. They want the nice shiny thing, but it's really about the numbers. Does it cash flow? Can you rent it? What are the, overhead costs? And on the other side, do you have enough to really float it if there's a vacancy? So it's really getting into that space for long-term rentals.
So good. So good, Jasmine. Thank you. I have a couple more questions. The first one is, what is bringing you joy right now?
Oh my gosh, bringing me joy. Well, I just came back from Costa Rica, which we talked about earlier.
Your tan looks great.
Thank you. I am currently planning my retirement escape to Costa Rica. So what's bringing me a lot of joy is I've been spending a lot of time looking for my next real estate acquisition, but it's going to be in Costa Rica this time. We've already looked at it, a few different properties. So we'll see that's bringing me a lot of joy. Second thing is we've got an upcoming trip planned to go see my in-laws in March, which is going to be like a little bit of a surprise. I can say that here because they're like 90, so they'll never listen. So it'll be a surprise. And then also we are actually relaunching a mastermind called Magic Flow. And it is my premier business coaching program. I support on everything from visibility to, money, to finances, to getting your pricing in order and soulful selling, all the things. So we're relaunching that. That new program is going to launch on January 14th. And so it's going to come out at an incredible price. So if you're looking for a mastermind, hit me up. It's so good. And that's a 6-month mastermind. So that's bringing me a lot of joy right now. And honestly, seeing my clients again. We took a little break off after the Christmas holidays and through the new year, just so everybody could reset. And today was the first container. And so we just had a fire conversation this morning. And yeah, I love seeing my clients. I love seeing them thrive. And the right people always find their way into my world somehow. And it's really, really meaningful. I think one of the things that has been so meaningful and joyful for me is just to see that finally allowing myself to have the voice to share the story and how many people it has affected. It actually makes me feel really teary because I think a lot of us sit at home with a dream on our heart and for whatever reason, we don't bring it to life. And the moment you realize that bringing it to life is actually more about others than you, it's pretty special.
That's winning the lottery right there, isn't it?
It really is. It's so much more than money. I think that's what people miss. It is about the money and it's so much more than that. So, yeah.
So your book, Transcending the White Picket Fence, is available now pretty much everywhere, right? I saw it on India.
Yeah, Amazon. It's available in stores. Amazon and Amazon.ca.com are really good. Obviously, you can get Prime and stuff. So, but yeah, it's available on those and in stores and across the globe.
Amazing. Congrats on that. That's such a big accomplishment. One last question before we sign off. What does it mean to be a boss to you?
I think it is someone who leads her own life.
Oh,
right.
So good.
Yeah. Like she who leads herself, right? I mean, a person who, and it, for me, I think it wasn't always that way, as you learn in my book, if you pick it up, but it's like the moment when you realize like, no, nobody's coming, like you're in the driver's seat and it's just you giving you permission, and you've got to lead yourself in a way that feels good and joyful and overflowing. And I think it's so available to everyone. And it's just giving yourself permission to make those brave, courageous decisions along the way to make it a reality, so it doesn't stay a dream in your head.
Amazing. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah. So I'm an IG girly, so you can find me on Instagram at Quantum Femme Wealth. That's my IG. I also have my website, quantumfemwealth.com. So if you want to book a free chat, if you want a financial conversation, or you want to talk about business coaching containers or anything we chatted about in the show, I'd love to have a conversation. Those are the primary places that I would suggest. You can also find me on Facebook, but I would say definitely IG and the website are best.
Amazing. Jasmine, you are such a visionary. You are so chill and down to earth. I hope we can meet up in person at Chairman's, have a steak dinner together, and continue this conversation, because this was so good. Thank you so much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure.
Well, thanks for having me, Lee. And thank you for doing this podcast. I'm so excited for all of the women that are going to be touched and hear this conversation. I wish you all the best as you grow this to, the beyond.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of She's the Boss. If you're enjoying these conversations, I want you to hit subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. And if there's a particular episode that you need your fellow entrepreneur to hear, make sure you share it with her. And while you're at it, can you please leave a quick 5-star review? It genuinely makes a difference, and I'll love you for it.